The Shadows at the Wood Line. This story is narrated using AI voice technology to create a more cinematic and immersive experience. The voice and pacing may be enhanced for dramatic effect, but the encounter itself is based on a real experience shared by someone who says they lived through it. Tonight's story is called The Shadows at the Wood Line, and that is exactly how I remember them. Not as people, not as animals, not as anything I could explain. Only as shadows standing where the yard ended and the woods began. When I was a young boy, right before dark, I would see them appear along the tree line surrounding my parents' home. They were shaped like humans, but darker than the evening itself. They never spoke. They never ran. They just stood there, silent and still, as if they were watching the house. Every night, they came. And every morning, they were gone. I am a grown man now. I have lived long enough to know that children sometimes imagine things. Shadows can look like people. Trees can move when the wind blows. Darkness can play tricks on your eyes. I know all of that. But what I saw as a boy was not my imagination. And even after all these years, I still do not have an answer for it. When I was young, my parents moved us out to a quiet place near the edge of the countryside. It was not completely isolated, but it felt far enough from everything. There were open fields, old trees, and a thick wood line that surrounded the back and sides of our home like a dark wall. During the day, it was peaceful. Birds sang in the trees. The grass moved softly in the wind. My siblings and I would run around outside until our parents called us in. Nothing about that place seemed dangerous when the sun was up. But right before dark, everything changed. It always started around the same time. The sky would turn orange, then purple, then that deep blue color that comes just before night. The air would become still. The birds would stop making noise. Even the insects seemed to quiet down. And then, I would see them. At first, I thought they were just shadows between the trees. Tall, dark shapes standing at the edge of the wood line. They did not move like people. They did not walk around. They just stood there, watching. I remember the first time I noticed one. I was standing near the back of the house, holding a stick in my hand, pretending it was a sword. I was probably 8 or 9 years old. I looked toward the trees, and there it was. A dark figure, humanoid in shape. It had a head, shoulders, arms, and legs, but no clear face. No clothing that I could see. No eyes. No mouth. Just a dark shape standing between two trees. At first, I froze. I thought maybe it was my father. But then I remembered my father was inside the house. I thought maybe it was a neighbor. But we did not have neighbors close enough to be walking through our woods at that hour. The figure stood completely still. Then, as the sky grew darker, I noticed another one. Then another. Then another. They were spread out along the wood line, standing several feet apart, like they were surrounding the property. I could feel my chest tighten. I wanted to run, but I could not move right away. I just stared at them, trying to understand what I was seeing. Then my mother called from inside the house. "Come inside now." Her voice snapped me out of it. I ran. I ran so fast I almost tripped over the porch step. When I got inside, I looked back through the window. They were still there, standing at the edge of the woods. Dark, silent, waiting. That night, I did not sleep well. I kept thinking about those shapes outside. I kept wondering if they had come closer after we went to bed. I wondered if they were still standing there in the dark, facing the house. The next morning, I ran to the window as soon as I woke up. They were gone. The wood line looked normal again. Just trees. Just grass. Just morning sunlight. I tried to tell myself I had imagined it. But that evening, they came back. Again, right before dark. Same place. Same stillness. Same dark human-like figures standing at the edge of the woods. And this time, there were more of them. I did not tell my parents right away. I was afraid they would say I was making it up. I was afraid they would laugh, or worse, tell me to stop scaring my younger siblings. So I kept it to myself. But night after night, I saw them. Sometimes there were only 3 or 4. Other nights, there were so many I could not count them all. They stood between the trees, along the fence line, near the tall grass, and behind the old shed. They never stepped fully into the yard, but they always seemed close enough for me to know they were there. And somehow, I always felt like they knew I could see them. That was the worst part. They never chased me. They never screamed. They never knocked on the windows. They just stood there. And somehow, that made it worse. Because when something chases you, at least you know what it wants. But these things, I had no idea what they wanted. One evening, I was sitting near the window in the living room while my parents were talking in the kitchen. The house was warm, and the lights were on, but outside, the world had turned dark blue. I looked toward the trees. They were there again. I counted 5 at first, then 7, then 9. They were standing in a line near the wood line, their bodies darker than the darkness around them. I remember pressing my face close to the glass. My breath fogged the window. Then one of the figures moved. Not much, just its head. It turned slightly, toward me. I pulled back so fast I hit the wall behind me. My heart started pounding. That was the first time I knew for sure they were not just shadows. Because shadows do not turn their heads. After that, I stopped playing outside near sunset. When my parents told us to come in before dark, I was always the first one inside. I would pretend I was tired or hungry, but the truth was, I was scared. I started watching the woods from different windows in the house. From the kitchen window, from the bedroom window, from the small window near the hallway. No matter where I looked, if it was right before dark, I could see them. Sometimes they were close to the trees. Sometimes they stood deeper in the woods. Sometimes they were so still I would blink over and over, trying to convince myself they were just tree trunks. But then one would shift, just slightly, and I would feel that cold feeling crawl up my back. There was one night I will never forget. It was late fall. The leaves had mostly fallen, and the woods looked thin and gray. The sky was cloudy, and there was no moonlight. My father had gone outside to put something away, and I was standing by the back door, waiting for him to come in. That was when I saw them closer than I had ever seen them before. They were not just at the wood line anymore. They were standing just beyond the edge of the yard, maybe 20 or 30 feet from the house. There were at least 6 of them, tall, dark, and shaped like people. But wrong. Their arms looked too long. Their bodies looked too thin. And even though I could not see their faces, I knew they were facing the house. I whispered for my father. He did not hear me. I wanted to yell, but my voice would not come out. Then my father turned and walked back toward the house. As he did, he passed right in front of them. He did not react. He did not look at them. He did not seem to see them at all. But I saw them. I saw one of those dark figures standing behind him as he walked across the yard. It did not follow him. It only watched. When my father came inside, I slammed the door shut and locked it. He looked at me and asked what was wrong. I told him I thought I saw someone outside. He looked through the window. Then he opened the door again and stepped out onto the porch. I begged him not to. He called into the yard. "Who's out there?" No answer. The woods were silent. My father stood there for a moment, listening. Then he came back inside and told me there was nobody there. But I knew what I had seen. After that night, I finally told my mother more about it. I told her about the dark people in the woods. I told her they came every night before dark. I told her they stood around the house until morning. She looked at me for a long time. She did not laugh. She did not say I was lying. She only told me not to go outside after dark anymore. And the way she said it made me feel like maybe she knew more than she wanted to tell me. Years passed. We eventually moved away from that house. Life went on. I grew older. I became a man. For a long time, I tried to bury that memory. I told myself maybe I had been a scared child. Maybe the trees and shadows had fooled me. Maybe my mind had created something out of fear. But even now, when I think back to that place, I remember the silence. I remember the way the air changed before they appeared. I remember how they stood at the edge of the woods, night after night, like they were waiting for something. And I remember the one that turned its head toward me. That memory has never left me. Sometimes, when I drive past wooded areas at dusk, I still find myself looking between the trees. I do not mean to. It just happens. My eyes search the wood line, looking for shapes, looking for movement, looking for something standing too still in the dark. Because deep down, a part of me still believes those things were real. I do not know what they were. Spirits, shadow people, something from the woods, something older than us. I only know this. Every night, right before dark, they came. They surrounded my parents' home, and by morning, they were gone. So if you ever find yourself looking out toward the trees right before dark and you see something standing too still between the trunks, do not stare too long, because it may already know you can see it. Thank you for listening. If this story gave you chills, please like, subscribe, and explore more stories here on Darktale Shorts 101. Because sometimes, the scariest stories are the ones people swear really happened.